Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where first off we're going to kick off this episode with the winners of the latest competition for a Blu-ray from our friends at Dolby Atmos. Now the movie in question this time was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which featured Dolby Atmos technology not just in the theater when you saw it, but now when it comes home with you on Blu-ray, as it will for these two BTT viewers who tweeted a one-sentence review to both myself and Dolby Atmos earlier this week. So, the number one tweet that I liked the best was Martin J. Esquada, and you will, by the way, be getting a message from me on Twitter about how to collect your prize. But Martin says, at Grace Randolph, the Ninja Turtles is like pizza, super cheesy, but oh so yummy. Hashtag Dolby Atmos. I thought that was a fun one. And then second place went to someone who was honest, and it was Sahil. And Sahil said, at Grace Randolph, hashtag Dolby Atmos, hello. Never thought TMNT would be better than Lucy, Transformers 4, and Amazing Spider-Man 2 this past summer. A little bit of perspective there. By the way, later today, the top 10 list that you voted for of the movies of the year will be going up. It might be up right now, so head over to the main Beyond the Trailer channel to check. And with that, let's dive into today's top 3 stories. But once again, just real fast, thanks to those great people at Dolby Atmos who continue to give us some goodies over here at Beyond the Trailer. All right, so Christmas is over, but there is a late Christmas gift for Universal and Focus Features, and that's that 50 Shades of Grey has been rated R by the MPAA board. And that is, I think, potentially, at least out of the gate, a very good thing for the two studios as they release this film. That's because an R rating will allow people to feel they can see the movie in theaters, and it's not too salacious. I mean, hopefully it'll just walk that fine line of being salacious enough to satisfy fans of the very, very dirty novels, but then at the same time be something that people feel they can go out and see in public, that they don't have to be embarrassed to see. And I think a lot of people aren't embarrassed by this, and they don't particularly care about the rating situation either, because before the news broke about the rating for 50 Shades of Grey, I can tell you that tickets went on sale for 50 Shades of Grey in advance, and they're going really fast. I am shocked at how fast they went. They filled up, and they've added more showtimes since, so when you might go and check now, and by the way, if you have any interest in seeing 50 Shades of Grey, go get your ticket now. I strongly recommend that you just have it in your pocket so that you don't have to worry about it, because I think there's going to be a huge rush of people to go see this movie. But when they first started putting late night showtimes for Thursday the 12th, it filled up as fast as something like Divergent, Hunger Games, these really Fault in Our Stars, these really successful literary adaptations. And of course, Twilight, which 50 Shades of Grey is based on. However, as I've said in my reviews, feel that 50 Shades of Grey is also kind of like a little bit more of a modern adult version of Cinderella, kind of like taking Pretty Woman to the next level. And interestingly, there are 2 Cinderella movies coming out in 2015, of course, 50 Shades of Grey, and then Disney's live-action version of Cinderella. So it'll be very interesting to see which one does better at the box office. But I don't think that Cinderella's tickets would sell quite as fast as 50 Shades are. But maybe it'll just be intense interest right initially, like on the first night, and then it'll die away if they can't get mainstream moviegoers to go and see it who perhaps aren't fans of the books. But you know what? Fans of the books could be so strong they might power this through at least the first weekend. So I think that's very interesting. Now, let's go back to this rating of R. Now, it does bring up the question, if 50 Shades of Grey is rated R, is it dirty enough? Is it going to scratch the itch of the readers who read it for a reason, right? And it certainly wasn't literary prowess on the part of E.L. James. No, they read it because it's a smutty book. So they did describe why it has an R rating, and this is promising for fans of 50 Shades of Grey. It says strong sexual content, and, so check, including dialogue. Then this was my favorite part, some unusual behavior, because of course it's BDSM. Although BDSM, fans of that, kind of bondage sex acts say it's a very healthy, relationship between two people. And also, here's a fun fact: Secretary, which made Maggie Gyllenhaal a star, or at least got her on her way, also a very famous James Spader film, also deals with BDSM. So that was one that people lauded for being a very healthy film. It's supposed to have helped Maggie Gyllenhaal in terms of her self-confidence, her character, etc. It also helped her in terms of her self-confidence, I'm sure, as an actress, having such a big, at least cult hit, a film that was quite talked about. And so that was really universally praised for the positive way it portrayed BDSM. And it really wasn't treated as a smutty film, while 50 Shades of Grey is, wearing its scarlet letter, which is now an R, with pride. But interesting, it'll be curious, though, to see the difference in the reaction, because Secretary, of course, did not make a lot of money at the box office. But continuing, it says, graphic nudity, so the actors apparently are willing to go there. I had some question as to whether or not they would, go all the way, considering the fact they're, at least, trying to be legitimate actors. It's not like when Steven Soderbergh hired porn star Sasha Grey to star in The Girlfriend Experience. And then it says, oh, and also there's some swearing. That's it, that's the straw that broke the camel's back. All the other stuff's okay, but if they swear, I'm out of there. So anyway, it has apparently what it needs to have in there, but not so much. It's not so unusual and so overtly sexual that it gets an NC-17. Or maybe the MPAA board is just getting a little softer. They're like, you know what? It's on HBO already. Who are we to judge people and keep them from being able to see the movies they want to see? So the other thing that could be happening here is that you have an R rating in theaters, and then quite cleverly, there could be a uncut, unrated version, which includes all the nasty stuff that goes out on Blu-ray later on as, something people can purchase, which will renew their interest. I mean, I don't know how much rewatchability factor 50 Shades of Grey has, but, maybe it has a huge ton of rewatchability. From what I've heard, you only need like one porn tape or one porn magazine, right? You don't need, you don't need to continually purchase new ones. At least that's how I've been educated through movies and television. There's just that one box that people tend to have. All right, so that's the first story of the day. I'm very curious, do you have your 50 Shades of Grey tickets? And how do you feel about this movie as it comes closer and closer to being released? It's pretty close. It's a little bit over a month away now. Are you feeling any differently about it, both as someone who might potentially see it, and also just in terms of, how seriously you take it? I think a lot of people thought it would just die on demand and no one really pay any attention to it. But if it's selling out theaters like this, we could have a very interesting box office headline. And Kingsman: The Secret Service, by the way, should be a little nervous. All right, so the second story of the day, talking about interesting things headed to your local theater, that would be Game of Thrones. And if you would like to see a Game of Thrones movie, as I think many people would, myself included, then you need to buy a ticket to the upcoming Game of Thrones IMAX Experience, which I am almost positive is a testing ground from HBO to see if they can get a movie in theaters. Now, of course, they can get a movie in theaters. They've been very successful with the Sex and the City transition from their pay cable channel to the big screen, 2 movies. And, of course, Entourage is coming up. And I think Game of Thrones, it is continually the most pirated film, pirated television series of the year, and potentially could be the most pirated film. But it is hugely popular. They already have an impressive budget, which is better than many feature films. The production values are certainly right up there. And I think people would love to see a movie. And I think it could do incredibly well, especially because they're talking about having it be the finale to the 7th season, instead of having just a single episode. It's like, okay, now leave your home and go see a movie. And I would do that. I think many people would do that. And I would get Neil Marshall to direct that movie, by the way. More on him in a moment. But I think that this is a very exciting time for not just HBO, but also the Game of Thrones franchise. I remember the lines around the block near my parents' house when they had the Game of Thrones exhibition in New York City, courtesy, I believe, of Time Warner Cable. And not just for one day. These were Comic-Con level lines for several days. And so that just shows the intense interest in this franchise. So to have a movie, I think, is a no-brainer. But apparently HBO wants to test the waters. So what's going on? Well, on January 23rd, which is even closer than 50 Shades of Grey debut, for 1 week, starting again on January 23rd, you can watch the final 2 episodes of Season 4 in theaters in IMAX, remastered for the IMAX screen. Now that, of course, includes I want to make sure I get the title right, the Watchers on the Wall episode, directed by Neil Marshall. He also did, I believe, the Blackwater episode. Fantastic. Both of those are real showstoppers. When they aired, both of them were thought at that time even to be at the level of a high-quality film. And I think Neil Marshall has more than proven he can handle amazing Game of Thrones, not just action sequences, but moving the story forward, etc. And he really would be at the top of my list to direct that film. So that's something you can see the Watchers on the Wall. I watched it twice when it aired. It was so good. I think it would be just amazing to watch. Giants and the Wall on IMAX could be pretty phenomenal. And then, of course, the finale. The finales are never quite as good. They'd have to change that for the movie, of course, on Game of Thrones. But then The Children is the final episode from season 4. So you watch both those episodes back to back for a movie-going experience. And then they're going to tack on an exclusive trailer for season 5 that will only play for, I'm sure, that only that week. Then it will debut online in IMAX theaters. So I'm very curious to see how this does. And again, if you really want to see a movie and you want to, just to be safe, I would go purchase a ticket to this event. Also, there's not too much to see in January, and although this really sucks for Seventh Son, it's a very similar type of property, which actually doesn't look too bad for me from the latest trailers, but we'll see. But I think this is very interesting, and I think Game of Thrones, I wonder if they can wait that long to make a movie. Of course, I think people will watch this show for as long as it's on. Its fandom has not died down in the slightest, but then neither is the quality. So as long as they keep that bar raised incredibly high and continue to raise it as they have, I think I see only bright things, including a movie in Game of Thrones' future. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that. Now let's head into the final story of the day, which I think a number of you will really be interested in, as am I, because we're big fans of the movie business. In fact, a BTT viewer, I believe named Daniela, the other day wrote me a wonderful comment on one of my videos, and she said, I just want to tell you that I enjoy this show a whole lot, and because of Beyond the Trailer and your coverage of the movie business, I'm currently in school, and I've decided that's the career that I would like to pursue. Not, being in front of the camera making movies, but the business side of making movies. And I think that's just phenomenal. I think that's an incredibly rewarding career. I think it's a very exciting career, and you really kind of, in a way, get to make all the movies. You get to, play in all the sandboxes, whereas a lot of the, the more prominent, and I don't like this part about Hollywood, that these are the more prominent individuals, but they only get to work on their singular film, which is why someone like Christopher Nolan says, I can't make Batman movies, I've already made them for a decade, I need to move on. But we'll see if I don't know, I feel, after Interstellar, a successful film, but I think not quite as well received. If he has a couple more of those, he might go back to comic books, or maybe Bond, and if Sam Mendes decides he needs a break. But anyway, in an era where we know who Amy Pascal is, of course, from the Sony hack, Kevin Tsuchihara, who runs Warner Brothers, and Kevin Feige, I think we can see that this is not only a rewarding and powerful career, but it's something that is becoming something in the public eye that fans are aware of these individuals. So very exciting. Best of luck to you, Danielle, and anyone who decides to pursue any career in show business. It's a tough place, but I think the rewards are impressive, and there are so many different places where you can find a place for yourself, and so I think that's wonderful. But what's the story? All right, I kind of got sidetracked there. The story is that George Clooney has a TV show that he's making. He's not going to star in it. I'm sure he'll probably guest star to help it out potentially. But he's getting into the small screen business, as is everyone, and his show has been picked up by Showtime, and it's called The Studio. Now, the way this is going to work is it's going to cover Hollywood in the 1990s, when big companies were purchasing the studios, which beforehand had been independent. For instance, we talk all the time. Comcast owns NBC and Universal. Sony Pictures is owned, it used to be Columbia Pictures, owned by Sony, etc. Fox, 20th Century Fox, has turned, of course, into this big company. And, now studios are divisions instead of, the whole enchilada, so to speak. So he's going to be portraying Hollywood at that time, and the log line is when corporate culture meets Hollywood excess, like the corporate idea of having to be accountable for your expenses, and the freewheeling spending of Hollywood. That makes no sense to me, by the way, because Hollywood still continues to spend quite prominently today. You can see those kind of leaks from the Sony hack, but still I think it's well known, the kind of riders that celebrities and actors and directors have attached to their contracts about what they get. And it's a crazy business. And corporate culture, by the way, is equally as guilty when you read some of the things that, for instance, when we had that whole problem with Wall Street, you became aware of a lot of the excess that was in corporate America as well. So I think that's a false statement, and I'm a little worried about that, and I'll tell you another reason. And it says that the focus of the show is going to be 2 male studio executives who run a studio together. I guess maybe one might be head of finances and maybe creative, which is sometimes a division that you have at the studio. And it says they're trying to navigate these choppy waters as the conglomerates come in and purchase the studios, while, and I quote this, maintaining their humanity. What? I don't think maintaining humanity is high on anyone's list in any business, especially one where there's such high stakes. I think that if you're really worried about your humanity, you're not going to go into that business. Now, not to scare you, Daniela, I'm not saying people who are in these businesses are horrible individuals, but, either you have a strong moral center or you don't. If you start fretting about your humanity, I think that you're going to get tripped up a lot in negotiations and, a business that involves, quite frankly, a lot of screaming and name-calling. It's a tough business where people make things very personal. But again, I think that every business is that way at the highest levels. But I guess what's different about the movie business is that it trickles down to every aspect of it. So I worry that George Clooney, he's a little partial to windy, excessive speeches, and so I would hate to see this show devolve into that. But I think if it gets it right, this could be pretty interesting, and it could be kind of like Mad Men by way of Ari Gold, which sounds pretty awesome to me. Now, by the way, Mad Men has always been infamous for having not great ratings, considering the fact it's such a cultural icon at this point, and meta Hollywood films never do that well at the box office. For instance, even Birdman right now, which I think does a really good job of making behind-the-scenes discussions accessible to those who previously weren't interested in them, that's even struggling at the box office. Imitation Game, as we talked about on Movie Math this week, just whizzed past it really easily, while Birdman, a very, very good film, and in my opinion, vastly superior to the Imitation Game, languishes at around 25 million total, whereas, Imitation Game is passing 30 with no signs of slowing down anytime soon. So we'll see if anyone will want to tune into this. I hope they do, and I hope they get this right. And also, I don't think they should focus just on the studio executives. One of the great things about working in Hollywood is all the different people you get to meet. And you get to meet people not just in your line of work, because, Hollywood is a team business. Making movies is teamwork. It requires teamwork, even though many people involved on that team will probably say, no, it does not. I think in Hollywood they do spell team with an I, by the way. But I think that if you have to have an actor playing an actor, I think that would be interesting. And I also think a really great perspective would be an actor or a director or a writer, someone who's used to being just talent, stepping into the producer role. That's something that happens a lot in Hollywood, increasingly so. Birdman explores that to some degree. Michael Keaton's character, Regan Thompson, is producing this play as well as starring in it, and that's why there's so much on the line for him, both creatively and financially. And I think that would be something really great to explore and lead to some interesting conversations, and I think that's an aspect of Hollywood that hasn't been explored too much. So I'd love to see that. I think you need a zany character, which would be the actor, and I think, just a couple of faces that make it a little more palatable to audiences, and again, pique their interest, and then when they see how interesting studio executives are, they become enamored with them as well. So it's a very tricky balancing act that they have here to make, I think, this a success. But I'm very curious in it, and it sounds like a great show to me. I also wanted to point out, if you don't want to wait for this, it's just got greenlit, so you're going to have to wait a while for it. But it reminded me of a really solid film directed by Barry Levinson that came out a while ago, 2008. But it's about a producer down on his luck, played by Robert De Niro, who's trying to make a comeback with a special picture, and he feels this is going to be the one that brings his career back. But this chronicles 2 weeks in production, where he's right before he's about to go into production, and he's running into a ton of trouble. It's a really good movie. It stars John Turturro as well, Stanley Tucci, Bruce Willis. I think Catherine Keener might be in it as well. But it's really good. I think it's a great rental. I don't know how great it would be if you saw it in theaters, but I think this is something that's wonderful to watch just on your downtime, especially if, like me, you're interested in the business side of movie making. And I think it's really accurate and interesting and fun. So I think it's a really solid little movie, and I think if I were George Clooney and his team, I'd be watching it as well. Not only for what worked, but for what obviously didn't work, because it didn't do well at the box office. All right, so that's today's morning movie news. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please write down what you think of today's top 3 stories, and be sure to let me know what you'd like to see covered tomorrow and any questions that you might have. Of course, today the viewer question spot got taken by the viewer giveaway. All right, so thank you so much, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.